creepy fellow in the woods. From cult members at midnight to hunters who will probably rape you. Grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and let's look at these 3 creeper stories of strange things in the woods. Dancing Man in the Forest. Okay, so this story isn't that creepy, but I wanted to share it anyways. Last night, me and my friend were going to buy some food in the evening. It was like 2:30 at night and already dark. We had to walk through this forest to get there. As we're walking, I see somebody moving in ahead of us, like spinning around. I didn't think much of it, it was probably some teens playing or something. But as we got closer, I couldn't see anybody else, so I was just thinking that person might have disappeared or something. Or maybe I just imagined it. I looked around and saw a man standing in the tree line, with his hands up on his head like he was doing ballet or something. My friend also turns there, and the guy tilted his head and lowered his hands, and then just pointed into the darkness of the woods. He didn't move, but just stayed there and pointing there. So me and my friend were laughing nervously about the situation, and we walked past him, and when I looked back, he was still just pointing there. Now, he could just be some guy stretching or walking his dog and being weird, but in the dark of the night, it was fucking creepy. Maybe he's just a shy dancer, but let's not meet again. The Cult in the Woods. I am from a town where as a teenager, there isn't much to do, except for smoking weed, drinking, or staying home. So my friends and I, over the years, turned it into somewhat stoners. Last summer, we were in the woods in the northern part of town, predictably smoking weed. We met up with some other kids at a tower on top of a large hill that had a view of our entire town. The kids we met up with told us how there were rumors of strange people in the woods, and how some had jokingly begun to call them a cult. After a while, we decided to leave as the other kids did not smoke, and were growing tired of watching us do so. We stumbled through the darkness down the rocky terrain of the hill, and walked down onto the main path. As we walked towards the edge of the woods, we noticed a few people walking towards us. When we came to about 25 feet from these people, something very strange happened. The people suddenly stopped. In our group of people, a whisper of what the fuck began to circulate. Looking at these strangers, we witnessed more people walk out from behind them, forming a wall, until at least 20 people were completely blocking the path. As our eyes adjusted, we noticed that several of them were holding lanterns, which gave a dull, eerie light that illuminated themselves just enough so we could see what they were wearing. Black robes. From their assembly of creeps, a man stepped forward. From what I could tell, he was in his 40s or 50s and balding. He held up his arms and exclaimed in a deep voice, "Welcome," and began walking towards us. I'm not sure if it was shock or the effect of the weed, probably both actually, but we stood still for a few seconds in shock, just watching this creeper walk towards us. From a crowd of kids, someone yelled, "Fuck this," and proceeded to sprint in the opposite direction, and everyone else quickly followed suit. Not fully understanding what was happening, I asked the person running next to me what the fuck was that. His response made me realize the severity of the situation. "Didn't you see that, bro? That fucking creep had a big ass knife. We gotta get the fuck out of here." Hearing that, I kicked my pace up a few gears and sprinted to the front of our group, I was not going to die. When we thought we had lost them, we stopped to regroup. We were all freaked out and thought we were going to be brutally murdered or sacrificed by this now seeming very real cult. We were so caught up in what just happened, we almost didn't realize that someone was missing. Mark, one of my best friends since the age of 5 years old, was not with us. Several kids stated that he was either dead or ran down a different trail, and that going back was a very bad idea. I, however, was not going to let one of my childhood friends get killed. Arming ourselves with rocks, we cautiously proceeded back the way we came, ready to bash in some cult members' skulls if we had to. Suddenly, someone ran out from behind a tree, but threw their hands up when we drew back our arms, ready to beat the shit out of them. "It's me!" Chill out, guys. Mark explained that when he started running, he had, in a very horror movie cliche moment, tripped. He saw the lanterns approaching, so he jumped off the trail and hid. We decided it was well past the time for us to leave, and seeing that the coast was clear, sprinted down the trail and out of the woods. Once outside, we began to taunt our would-be murderers, obnoxiously throwing insults into the dark woods. That is until a rock came flying out of the darkness and hit a parking sign 5 feet to my left. I like to say that we stayed there and taunted them even more for failing to hit us, but the truth is, we screamed like little girls and ran far away from those woods. I've been back several times at night, and several more creepy encounters. But alas, I have never seen the cult again, and hopefully, never will. Night vision. It was the summer before my senior year in college. My little brother, always interested in military stuff, had gotten a pair of night vision goggles for his birthday, and he left them at my apartment. One night I was bored and decided to go out trying the goggles at a wooded hiking area. In retrospect, this seems like a very stupid idea, since I was all by myself at the time, and a female. But I was young and stupid, and I got myself all excited at the possibility of seeing deer and other woodland creatures in their natural nighttime habitat. I was familiar with these woods. My best friend and I had hiked there at night, and we'd never run into anyone else. Our area is mostly rural and pretty safe, so I didn't anticipate any trouble. I parked in a little sparsely lit parking area, ignored the sign "Park closes at 10", and entered the woods, night vision goggles in my hands. It was a half moon that night, and that was the only light that filtered down the canopy of trees. It was pretty dark, and I didn't want to put on the goggles until I found a place to sit down, so I lit my way with my little keychain flashlight. A couple times I thought I heard a little rustling in the woods, a far distance away, but I thought it was nothing out of the ordinary and put it down to animal activity. Hopefully, the deer I'd come hoping to see. After I hiked a fair distance, I found a fallen log to sit on and put on the goggles. I don't know if you've ever used night vision goggles before, but the effect is impressive. They can turn near pitch darkness into bright as day. Everything appears in shades of green, but quite bright and clear. For a while, I had a blast looking around from my fallen log vantage point. Some chipmunks playing around in the leaves nearby, and a big owl blinked its eyes at me from a tree branch. No deer though, and I started to think that maybe they wouldn't be likely to come anywhere near me, darkness or no. if I sat right out in the open on a log. So I decided to find a place where I could be a little more hidden. I made my way a little deeper into the woods and finally found a huge tree, perfect for climbing. I've always loved climbing trees, so it was nothing for me to hoist myself up a few branches and settle in to wait for my deer. I didn't get to see any. What I did see, lit up in bright night vision green, after about 10 minutes of waiting, was this. A man, dressed head to toe in dark colored clothing, making his way hiddenly through the woods. He was coming from the same direction I'd come, and was clearly trying to stay hidden, moving from tree to tree and glancing around carefully before moving on again. It looked very much like he was looking for someone. It took me a few minutes to notice that he was carrying something, and when I saw what it was, the hairs on my back of my neck stood up. He had a knife, a big one, and he was gripping it as if he expected to use it in the very near future. It wasn't deer hunting season, and this was a nature preserve where hunting of any kind was prohibited. And at any rate, the guy was alone and not dressed like a hunter, and there were no deer in sight, and very few hunters kill their prey with knives. I was suddenly horribly aware of my situation. A young woman alone, weaponless, in the middle of the woods at night. This was the 90s, so no cell phones, and even if I had one, I wouldn't feel safe, as it might draw his attention. I didn't know how he was able to see so well in the dark. I guess his eyes had just adjusted, and I was terrified he would look up and see me. I sat there, afraid to move, afraid to breathe, and watched him as he continued his methodical and stealthy process of scanning the forest for who or whatever the hell he was stalking. I scanned around, but couldn't see anyone else, even from my high vantage point, and the sickening thought struck me that he might be looking for me. I remembered the rustling noises I heard in the woods when I first arrived, and then I thought back further and remembered something else. A white car that followed too close behind me for most of my drive to the nature preserve. I'd been annoyed and a little freaked out at the time, but when I turned into the nature preserve parking area, the white car had passed me and driven on its way, and I hadn't thought anything more of it. Now I wondered, horrified, if this was the driver of that car, if he'd circled back and seen my parked car alone in the lot, if he'd come in after me. I sat, paralyzed with fear, and watched the man for what felt like forever, but was probably half hour or so. There was a heart-stopping moment when he paused right underneath my tree, and I was sure he was going to look up and find me. But he didn't. After a while, he seemed to give up on whatever plan he had in mind. I heard him say, "Fuck it," and he started heading back in the direction he'd come, the direction of the parking area. I stayed in the tree, wet with sweat and crying, until the sun came up a few hours later. Then I climbed down, and still terrified, gripping the little can of pepper spray on my keychain, I made my way as fast as I could to the parking lot. The man had been there. My windshield had been smashed with a rock, and someone had scraped all the sides of the car with something sharp, presumably a giant knife that I'm lucky didn't end up in my chest. Thank God for the night vision goggles that let me see him before he could see me, and thank God for big trees with sturdy branches, creepy forest rapist Let's never meet again.